Since before the first moon landings of 1969, there has been interest in space travel to the moon. Lunar programs are expensive and difficult, but there are several reasons why the moon might be a good place to launch further space exploration. Firstly, a moon launch base would eliminate the most difficult aspect of space travel, namely, getting a rocket through the Earth's gravity. The journey time between, say, going to Mars from Earth rather than from the moon is not significant. However, the cost difference would be immense, as it would take 20 times less fuel to launch a spacecraft from the moon than from the Earth, due to there being less gravity on the moon. There would not need to be a drain on the Earth's resources, as the moon is rich in all the necessary minerals, such as aluminium and silicon, which would mean that the entire infrastructure needed to enable spacecraft launch from the moon could be done robotically using the materials already present.
The moon could be a good base to launch spacecraft that would explore the solar system further. Although some of the same issues would apply as when launching a spacecraft from Earth, it would be easier from the moon because of less gravity. It would be cheaper because less fuel would be needed, and all the materials required to build the necessary infrastructure are already on the moon naturally.
The world's first artists were ancient people who lived 40,000 years ago or more and did cave paintings. But what did they paint, and who exactly were these early artists? Well, they didn't paint human beings. Instead, they painted animals on the walls of their caves. That's because animals were very important to them. After all, the animals provided them with food and clothing. As well as animals, they put their hands against the cave walls and painted around them. And it's these handprints which may help us to answer the second question: who did the paintings? For a long time, it was believed that it was mostly men. However, research done on paintings in a cave in France has shown that the artists were often women, and not just men. We know this because the size of women's hands is smaller than men's hands. In fact, the majority of the handprints in the French cave were smaller ones. This has made us think again about who the world's first artists really were.
The world's first artists did cave paintings. They lived maybe as long as 40,000 years ago. Instead of people, they painted animals. Animals were important because they used them for food and clothes. They also made handprints on cave walls by painting around their hands. Research on paintings in a French cave showed that both men and women did them. People used to think the artists were usually men, but women have smaller hands than men, and most handprints in that cave were smaller ones. This is important because we now have to think again about who those early artists were.
In today's session, we're going to look at an important concept in psychology, which is called the bystander effect. When there's an emergency situation in public, you'd hope that a person nearby would intervene and help, but actually, most people have a tendency to, well, do nothing. That's the bystander effect, essentially. And here's the interesting thing. The more people there are in an emergency situation, the less likely it is that anyone will actually intervene. There's an inverse relationship between the number of bystanders and the amount of help offered. So why is that? Well, researchers have identified something called diffusion of responsibility. Basically, everyone just assumes that someone else will take charge of the situation instead of them. And obviously, that can lead to potentially serious consequences. So that brings me to ways that this problem can be tackled. Of course, we should be educating people in school and workplaces about basic first aid and what to do in an emergency. That will give people more confidence, but that doesn't address the bystander effect. Basically, we have to minimize the diffusion of responsibility. And the best way of doing this is by getting people to imagine that they are the only person available to intervene. This gives them the responsibility, so they will be more likely to step in.
The bystander effect is when people who witness something that they could and should prevent end up taking no action at all. Research suggests that the higher the number of witnesses, the lower the probability that someone will try to intervene. Psychologists attribute this to diffusion of responsibility, because in such situations, everyone is waiting for another person to take action. There are ways that we can reduce the influence of the bystander effect. The key principle is to encourage people to imagine that they are the only person who can take action in a situation.
As a new student, there are many things that you can do to get a good start at university. Attending lectures is something that we expect all students to do. If you miss a lecture, though, or didn't quite understand the topic, or simply want to hear it again, you can watch a video recording of the lecture online. However, university life is very busy, and you won't have much time, so it's better to concentrate and take good notes when you do attend a lecture. If you make notes, it helps you to think about the important facts and ideas in the lecture, and writing these things down can help you to remember them. Again, there may be lecture notes available online, but making your own notes is much more valuable.
The lecture tells new students at university what they should do. The speaker says that students should go to lectures, but if they can't go to one, they can see a video of it online. It's better to go to lectures and take notes, though, because taking notes can help students remember important things from the lectures.
The salt trade has existed for thousands of years and arguably has played an even greater role in shaping the world's economic and social history than products like silk, cotton, or spices. Salt mining is still hugely important today, and there are three basic ways that salt can be extracted from oceans or underground sources. So, starting with probably the earliest method, which is solar evaporation. This method is used to extract salt from seawater. Basically, seawater is collected in shallow pools. The seawater dries out when it's exposed to sun and wind. When this happens, a layer of salt is left behind which can be cleaned and harvested. A newer technique is solution mining. This method uses a water solution to extract salt from underground rock sources. Water is injected into the rock and absorbs the salt. The salty liquid is then pumped back to the surface, where the salt can be extracted at a processing plant. Finally, deep shaft mining is similar to other types of mineral mining. Here, pieces of rock containing the salt are drilled away from the mine shaft. These pieces are then crushed into smaller chunks and transported to the top for processing.
Salt has always been important throughout history. There are three main ways to extract salt. Solar evaporation is a traditional method. In this method, sun and wind dry out seawater which has been collected in pools. The salt that remains can then be collected and processed. Solution mining uses liquid to extract and transport salt from underground rocks. Similarly, deep shaft mining collects salt from rocks, but by drilling and removing pieces of rock which can then be processed.
Today, we're looking at the study options available to students after completing school. And the two main choices are higher education and further education. Higher education basically means studying for a university degree. This involves detailed study and is usually theoretical in nature. That said, the skills students learn can be used in many different careers, so companies are eager to hire graduates. However, remember that degree courses are long and costly. Conversely, further education focuses more on practical skills rather than theoretical knowledge. These courses prepare students for a specific job, such as training to be a chef, and offer great practical work experience opportunities. However, as the skills learnt on further education courses tend to be more specialised, they cannot be transferred to other types of career very easily. As you can see, it's important to compare the pros and cons of higher and further education carefully before making a decision.
Students who wish to continue their education after finishing school have two main options, namely higher or further education. Higher education involves studying for an academic degree. Students develop various skills that can be applied to many different professional contexts, so degrees are valued by employers. However, they are time-consuming and expensive. By contrast, further education trains students for a specific vocation. Students get practical work experience and learn the skills they need for a specific job, although they might not be able to transfer these skills into other professions later.
Today, I'm going to talk about the art of paper marbling, which, as the name suggests, is about adding beautiful, colourful designs onto paper. It involves putting a piece of paper onto a tray of special water and paint in order to create unique and detailed designs. As for the history of this art, the origins are not entirely known, although it is believed to have begun in China or Japan. Paper marbling subsequently became very popular in Turkey. Indeed, Turkish paper marbling developed its own particular styles, characterized by brighter colors. This type of marbling gained a lot of popularity in Europe in the 17th century and was used extensively in the publishing industry for book covers, especially in England. It was an attractive and effective way of hiding any minor damage to a book. Nowadays, the art of paper marbling is in decline for various reasons. However, there are attempts to encourage a new generation to discover paper marbling, and social media is a great way to promote it to a new audience. Paper marbling classes are also starting to appear, so perhaps there is hope for this art.
Paper marbling is a form of art which is thought to have originated in China and Japan. It later spread to Turkey, where unique Turkish styles of paper marbling became popular. Turkish marbling designs became very popular across Europe in the 17th century, and especially in England, where they were used extensively in the publishing industry. Marbled paper was used in books to cover up any slight damage to a book. Nowadays, this traditional art is far less common, but there are attempts to revive it by encouraging people to take special classes and by promoting it via social media.
Let's begin with a definition. Typography is the art and technique of arranging letters and text on a page so that readers can read it easily and it looks attractive so people want to read it. So why does typography matter? Well, we live in a visual world. We're used to figuring out the aim of a document by looking at its style and appearance, even before we start reading it. Whenever we see a document, we form an immediate judgment. We're experts at doing this. Recent research into readers' responses to different types of print designs has revealed some common assumptions readers make when they first see a document. Subjects were presented with carefully designed pages but couldn't read any of the text because it contained words which don't actually exist. Despite this, they could still make important decisions based on how the information was presented. They quickly decided how accurate the content was and the possible use of the document. They also looked at the boxes of texts and images to decide how serious the text might be. If the text boxes were in lots of different colours or shapes and sizes, then these were related to negative qualities. These results confirm that readers respond to how something is designed as soon as they see it.
Typography is about how you organize letters and text on a page. The aim is to do this so that it's easy to read and looks nice. A typography is important because we're very good at looking at the style and appearance of a document and making judgments about its purpose. Research has provided proof of this. People were given pages written using invented words. Although they couldn't understand the content, they were still able to make judgments about the quality of the information from how it was presented in the document.
Today's session is about a feature of TV production called canned laughter, a recording of a studio audience laughing inserted into a program. So the finished product sounds as if the studio audience is laughing along as the action unfolds. There are several reasons for the use of canned laughter, which we can divide into technical reasons and creative ones. In terms of technical aspects, canned laughter compensates for the unpredictability of live studio audiences. For instance, some individuals might laugh too loudly or in what producers consider to be the wrong places, or they might even clap and cheer, all of which can interfere with the scene. And of course, canned laughter is also needed when scenes take place outside a studio. However, canned laughter is also believed to enhance the program itself. Research has shown that the inclusion of canned laughter can actually change people's perceptions of what they're watching. It's been demonstrated that viewers are more likely to laugh or have a favourable impression of a scene when they can hear other people laughing. So canned laughter is great news for television executives that crave high ratings. Of course, as viewers' tastes in comedy have changed, many shows have moved away from the use of canned laughter. Nevertheless, it remains an effective and familiar aspect of TV comedy.
Canned laughter is a sound recording of people's laughter which is added to make it appear as if a live audience is responding directly to the scene. As studio audiences can behave in unexpected ways, canned laughter is a way of getting laughter in the right places and is also used when a scene is shot away from a studio. Research has shown that canned laughter can also make a program seem funnier to viewers. People are more likely to laugh when they hear canned laughter during a program. Use of canned laughter is becoming less common, but it's still an important element of TV comedy in many countries.
When a baby is born, its brain is already a quarter of its final size. But when does a baby start to learn? Well, experts believe that a baby is learning even before it is born. When it is born, though, it will start learning very quickly, much more quickly than an adult. At the beginning, the baby listens and watches all the skills being performed that it needs to learn, such as speaking, walking, playing, eating, and singing. Some parents think that their baby isn't learning, but it is. The baby has to watch and listen to something many times before it can do that thing. For parents, an exciting moment is their baby's first smile. This happens at around 6 weeks old. Another important moment is when baby takes its first step. The earliest this can happen is when the baby is about 9 months old.
The lecture is about babies and how they learn. When a baby is born, its brain is already relatively large, and the baby immediately starts learning. It has to learn many skills, such as talking, walking, and playing. It can't do these things until it has watched and listened to someone doing them many times. There are important moments for parents of young babies, like the first smile at about 6 weeks and starting to walk after about 9 months.